We thank Hashem. Pei Zion 87b. Thank Hashem that we're able to learn. It's chus of learning Mishav the Beis Hamikdash. Starts like this. Ha'isha shalach baila l'Medina Sayam. A woman, her husband went on a trip. Medina Sayam. Ubo v'amrula, and they came and they said to her, Meis bailach, that your husband passed away. Now, the v'amru, ba'u v'amru is they, that's the plural. Turns out that it's really an eid echad. One witness came. That's how we're going to learn this in the Gemara. It's really only one witness. Now, so why does it say bo v'amru? Maybe it means based on Bezdin, or maybe it means eid mi pi eid is nem, and also they came, that it's one witness heard from another witness. Altogether, she gets told that her husband passed away. Okay. Benissus. So she goes and she gets remarried. The only problem is v'achakach ba'baila. Her husband was still alive. And he shows up, and now there's a problem. She's married to the new husband, and the old husband is still there. Well, the halacha is teitzi mizeh. She has to leave both of them. Now, the fact that she has to leave the second one, that's quite obvious, because she's really shouldn't be married to him. She's a married woman. Why does she have to leave the first one? She's Ines. She thought she was allowed. So we have a rule that Isha Daiko Mitzvah. Before a woman gets married, she has to do her own examination as well. She should not be getting married without her own her own investigation. You know, she's just relied on. You know, sometimes they go to the store and there's a kasha symbol. It's got to be good. So it's not enough. I mean, you have to check to make sure that that symbol is good. So someone shows up, you have to ask another few questions to make sure that this is acceptable. And she didn't do that. So she's not considered an inus. And teitzi mizeh mizeh. Tzricha get mizeh mizeh. She needs a get from both. Now, the get from the first one is obvious. But the get from the second one was never a real marriage. We have to see why she needs a get from the second one. Ve'ein la ksuba. She loses her ksuba. She doesn't get a ksuba. Probably means from both of them. Olei peiros. And she doesn't get the fruits. Now, fruits means that the husband was possibly eating. Possibly one of the Rishonim explain it that the husband went on a trip, and he's actually living off one of her properties that she owns somewhere else, and he is eating those fruits. Now, if she's now remarried, she's married to someone else, should he be eating those fruits if they're really separated? He should really be paying for it. That's one of the explanations. But whatever the case is, she doesn't get the fruits from the second husband either. If the second husband was eating the peiros of the nichsei malug, of the property that she brought in, which she was never really the husband, she doesn't get paid back for it. But what really happens is that he never had any obligation to redeem her, because, you know, if she would have been taken captive, so the fruits are in exchange for that, and like an insurance that she would get redeemed. Okay. Like mezainis, she doesn't get paid back for if she took a loan to be able to support herself from someone. The husband returns, he doesn't have to pay back that loan. I guess the obligation would go on her to pay that. Belois is if she brought in linens or different things into the marriage, she doesn't get that back. It's a discussion if she gets back the original, the keren, She doesn't get back if it's been lost. Let's say if it's nechseit sein barzel, the husband is supposed to pay the original value. As they actually mark down what it was when they got married, so he doesn't have to pay back anything if it got worth less. Now what we're saying is not on anyone. It's a huge knas here. Basically, she has we're leaving her with nothing. I'm sorry.
Blood is like scrap.
Yeah.
Scrap cloth.
Right.
Which it's not nice cloth, even just
right.
rags, basically.
She doesn't get even that. She doesn't take back. And if she did take, then tachzer, she has to give it back. Vlad mamzer the child that she has after this occurrence, like after the husband, after she gets married to the new husband, and the second husband comes back. Well, after she gets married, from the second husband, the child is a mamzer. And if she goes back to the first husband, then the child is a mamzer from him as well. Now, why is the child a mamzer from him? That's really just a mamzer midirabanan. It's not a biblical mamzer. She's really this person's husband. The thing is, she was required to get divorced from him. Yeah, that comes out, we'll see that there's a difficulty with the mamzer midirabanan, even more than a regular mamzer. A regular mamzer can marry a mamzeres. A mamzer midirabanan can't marry into the community and can't marry a mamzeres. It's not a real mamzer. Yeah, problematic. Both husbands, if they're kayanim, cannot become tummy to her because she's not really the wife. And both husbands can't take keep the objects that she finds. In her income, they don't get that. And they also can't annul her vows. She's not really married to them. Let's say she was a Bas Yisrael. Well, Nifsalam and Akuna. With this second marriage, she becomes puzzled to the Kayan because she becomes a Zaina. Bas Levi. If she was a Bas Levi, then she becomes Aser Min HaMaisa. Now, can only be a Knas. That's a fine that they did on her. That's a punishment. That's not a fact. Because even according to Reb Meir, that a Levi, but does it have to be a Levi that's eligible for something? Any Levi is allowed to eat Maisa. Ubas Kayan, if she's a Bas Kayan, so Minat Truma. She's puzzled, she doesn't eat Truma now. Now, she would go back to her father's house. Let's say she didn't have any children. She'd be a Chalala. And I think we learned before that a Chalala was puzzled, doesn't eat, that she doesn't eat Truma. But here, apparently there's a Chiddush that in Truma Midrabanan, Rashi's saying, okay, whatever the case is, she doesn't eat Truma. Ve'in Yarshin shel zeh, the Yarshin shel zeh, Yarshin es ksubasa. This we have to see in the Gemara how this is going to be explained. It says that the inheritors don't get the ksuba. Now, she doesn't even have a ksuba, so we have to figure out what that means. She doesn't, not from the first husband, not from the second husband, not going to inherit the ksuba, but there is no ksuba, so we have to wait for the Gemara to see. The mesu. Let's say the husbands pass away and they have brothers. So do you do yibam? So no, you can only do chalitza. The first one is a real marriage. The first husband's brother, so therefore their chalitza would be midaraisa. The second one she wasn't really married to, but for some reason she still has to do chalitza from the second husband's, the deceased, to his brother, even though there wasn't a real marriage there, because she was really married the whole time. It's interesting. They're being quite strict on her. We said we needed a get from the second husband. And so if they need a get from the second husband, they also need a chalitza if he passed away from the brother. Rabbi Yossi Yomer, Ksubasa al nichsei baila harishon. Yossi says that she does get a ksuba from the first husband. Rabbi Elazar says, Harishon zakai b'mitziyasu ma'asiyah b'fars nedara. Rabbi Elazar says that the first one also gets the first husband gets the objects that she finds. Just he keeps it goes into his possessions. And the work of her hands, that means her income belongs to him. And he can also annul the vows. He still is married to her. Reb Shimon Aimer, I think what this means is that we said before that she doesn't do yibam, only chalitza. Reb Shimon says that if she does do yibam, it's effective, and the other brothers don't need chalitza. A yibam would actually work. If she gets married without permission, this is very different than what it sounds. What it means she gets married without permission means that she didn't need permission because two witnesses came and said that her husband passed away. So with two witnesses, then she knows that for a fact.
So it says,
that was one witness. That was Eidecha. That's what we were discussing. Why is it uva'u va'amru? Yeah, that's a problem. It's a problematic plural. And we said maybe it means aid me aid, that there was several levels of one witness told another witness. Anyway, it ended up reaching her. It's really an Eidecha at the beginning. And here it's Shalei B'Shus, it's two Eidim. Two Eidim, then Muteres Lachsalai, then she's considered an Einus. What is an Einus? It means the fact that she got married to someone else is not as a rebellious wife. She was not an adulteress. She thought that her husband was passed away. She had two witnesses. So she's allowed to go back to her first husband. Not if he's a Kayan. That would be a problem. If he's a Yisrael, then he can go back. She can go back. Nisas al pi Bezdin. Let's say she got married according to Bezdin. Now, Nisas al pi Bezdin now means that it was really just an Eid Echad. Back to case number one. The Bezdin allowed her to get married. She has to leave the first husband, but she doesn't have to bring a carbon. Lo Nisas al pi Bezdin. If she didn't get married according to Bezdin, that means she had two witnesses. She didn't have to go to Bezdin. The two witnesses came and told her. I guess all outside of Bezdin. It's really only two cases because there's Eid Echad. Yeah, I don't know. The problem is I don't know if the first case really makes a difference. If it was Bezdin or not Bezdin. Because all of those things, it looks like the first case looks like it was without Bezdin because she's really getting punished. But I don't know if that's the case. It could be even in Bezdin. So what did we say afterwards? Just that she doesn't have to bring the carbon. After all of that, she doesn't have to bring a carbon. Right. If it wasn't Alpi Bezdin, because there was two Eidim, so Teitze, what would the Teitze be? Teitze from the second husband. V'chayeves b'carbon. Lo nisas Alpi Bezdin, because there were two Eidim, so Teitze v'chayeves b'carbon. She has to bring a carbon. Why is it Teitze? Why would it be Teitze? Teitze from the second husband, it must be. Because she's allowed to stay with the first husband, because there were two witnesses. She's considered a Ninus. Yafekayach Bezdin, Shaptur min carbon. Here it's interesting. What comes out is that if there was only one witness and it was through Bezdin, so then she's exempt from carbon. Hayrua Bezdin linasi v'halcha v'kilkala. If Bezdin allows her to get married, but instead of getting married to someone that she's allowed to, she gets married to someone she's not allowed to. For example, she marries a kohen and she was a gerusha from beforehand. So Bezdin said yes. She takes the heter and she goes and she messes up and she marries someone that she wasn't even allowed to. So then chayeves bekarban, she is chayeves bekarban. She does have to bring a karban. So literally nothing. Bezdin didn't allow her to do that marriage. Bezdin allowed her to do a different marriage. Yeah. Okay, let's see in the Gemara. We have to figure out what's going on. Starts like this. Midiktani seifa nisis shalei b'shus. We have a case that's got to be about 12 lines down in the Mishnah, that if she gets married without permission, so the halacha was muteres lachsolai. She's allowed to go back to her first husband. What's happening in that case? There must be an advantage to that case. Why is she allowed to go back to her first husband? And the wording of the Mishnah is that she doesn't have permission, and now she's allowed to go back. It must mean that that's a better case. She's allowed to go back. So why is it a better case? Because there were witnesses there. She didn't need permission. It was automatic. She doesn't need to go to Bezdin. Her husband passed away. Michlal, but that would imply the Reisha B'Shus Bezdin Ubeid Echad. That in the first case, when we said Meis Baila of Amrul Meis Bailach V'Nissus, and over there we say Teitzim Mizel Mizeh, that's because there was only one witness, and she did need the permission of Bezdin. But how was she allowed to get married? Sounds like it was B'Shus Bezdin. Almei Dechad Neman. Obviously, one witness is believed. That's what we're seeing from this Gemara. That we trust one witness.
Isn't that the halakha today with respect to the subject?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is the big deal. This is the big sugya here. That we're going to trust one witness on such a serious matter. Imagine one person comes. One person comes and tells us a story. They say, okay, now let's trust him.
So when it says whether it's one or two witnesses coming to Beis Din, was that the procedure? Would Beis Din declare, all right, we believe this husband is dead? Why are they at Beis Din in the first place? My question. Was it part of the Beis Din investigation to marry her to the number two?
Yeah, why are they investing? Later on, the Gemara is going to discuss if it's a Kohen, Bezdin has like more obligations. But here, not necessarily is it a Kohen.
Mm-hmm.
It must be just because we need to determine if this witness is trusted, or they're showing up in Bezdin. Yeah, two witnesses for some reason wasn't even like requiring a psak. And one witness requires a psak in Bezdin. That's what it sounds like. Taisus really asks us. That's Taisus. Mechlal Dereisha B'Shus Bezdin. That's really Taisus discussion. Okay. Utananami. And this is correct what we're saying, that one witness would be believed. We even have a Mishnah. It says, Huchzaku liyis masiyan al pi aid. Is there something supposed to be different over there? Oh, I'm sorry. Huchzaku liyis masiyan aid mi pi aid. You hear that? One witness tells another witness. In other words, the first witness didn't make it all the way. So he tells someone else. Usually you can't trust a witness like that. You have to have the person that saw it show up in Bezdin. Here you don't need that. B'isha mi pi'isha. You can even trust one woman that tells another woman. Usually you don't trust a woman in Bezdin to testify. Here we're trusting a woman. B'isha mi pi'evadim pi'shivcha. You can even trust a woman that heard from a slave that heard from a shivcha. Alma, we see Eidechad Mehaman. The one witness is believed. Utananami. we have another Mishnah. Eida chadaimer achalta chelev. One witness says to a person that, by the way, that piece of meat that you ate, that was really chelev. And he says, lo yachalti. I didn't eat it. So he's pater. He's exempt. Now, I thought you said you trust one witness. One witness is telling him that he ate. He says, well, taimedamar lo yachalti. That's because he's certain that he didn't eat it. But if he would be silent, so mehaman, then we would trust one witness. So we see in a regular case where there's no contradiction to that witness, we are going to trust a single witness. We see that midiraisa we're going to trust one witness. Now we just threw in the deraisa part here because what we're saying is that he's now has to bring a carbon. If it wouldn't be believed midiraisa, it was just some chumrah, then we have to trust him or whatever. But if it would just be a chumrah and it wasn't meheman midiraisa, then how would he be allowed to bring a carbon and then to go eat this carbon? It would all be, you can't bring a carbon unless he knows for sure. Yeah, Rashi adds in the word ilay meheman hechim is achla. How could it be eaten? Rashi doesn't mention how could he have brought the carbon. And the reason is because maybe the aid brought the carbon, because maybe the aid was the kayin or the shaykhet, and he brought the carbon, and he thinks that he's allowed to. But then, how would the person be allowed to eat it if he knows, or if he doesn't know? How would he be allowed to eat if he doesn't know? And the answer is because you trust the one witness that does know. See, Eidachad is Neman Midairais. The Gemara says Minalan, but what's our source for this? It says the Tanya was taught in a brisa. The brisa is talking about a carbon chatas. It says or it becomes known his sin, or it becomes known to him his sin. And not if other people tell him. He has to actually know it on his own. Maybe even if he doesn't contradict them, he should be pater as well. No, if they tell him, then it's considered that he knows it. Now, 1 second. What's the case that you just taught to me that if he's told by witnesses that he has to bring a carbon, if 2 witnesses come and tell him that he did a sin, for that you need a pasuk that you're going to trust 2 witnesses. It must be that it was only 1 witness. And if he doesn't contradict the witness, if he doesn't say, no, you don't know what you're talking about, so he's just quiet. So so we see you're going to trust 1 witness. The Gemara asks, how do we know that it's really because we're trusting a witness here? Maybe there's another svara. It's a very interesting logic. See, the witness.
10 minutes walk here, 15 minutes to climb over all the benches to get my towels. Do you have your towels on the bench? So put it on snack.
You're going to daven up here today?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So maybe it has to do with the fact that he was quiet. If he's quiet, it's as if that he himself is admitting. It's not because we're trusting the witness. We're trusting him. But 1 second, he didn't say anything. Well, we're saying, but his silence is as if he admitted. So it is like he said something. So you follow, it's not a shtika, it's not a eidechad, it's not an emanas of 1 witness. It's a shtika kaida. I don't know what the difference is.
Witness has to say something. He didn't say.
No, the witness did say. The person that's involved is quiet. maybe it's a combination. I would have thought that it's a combination. One witness and him being quiet and him not saying anything is believed. Now we're saying it that no, it's not the witness at all. It's his being quiet.
That would be right for two witnesses. We're just saying that one can do it also being not saying one witness, you have from one.
Yeah, there's a witness that's showing up and saying that in this case, we're also, there's two cases here that we're dealing with at least. One is that the husband passed away. The other one is that we're telling the person that he ate chaylev. So we believe that the husband passed away. We also believe that he ate chaylev. But how is that? It's only one witness. Saying, well, one witness is believed. We say, how do you know it's because of one witness being believed? Maybe it's because he did not contradict the witness. And it's really his admitting by not contradicting. It's not that you usually believe one witness. We don't believe a witness, but because he didn't say anything, so it's like him testifying. So Teda, I'll bring you a proof. The Ktani Seifa, because if you look further in that Mishnah regarding the Karban Chatas, it says, Amru Shnayim Achalta Chelev. Two people said that you ate Chelev. He says, I didn't eat. It says Pater. Yeah, now you have two witnesses telling him. Two witnesses tell him that he ate Chelev. He says, no, I didn't. So it's him against two. So the Tanakama says Pater. Reb Meir Mechayev. Reb Meir says, no, he's Chayev. We don't believe him against two witnesses. Amar Reb Meir says, Kal v'chaymer. I have a logic that's going to prove that we don't believe him against two witnesses. Why? Two witnesses would show up and say that he did a crime, he did a violation that would cause him to be killed. And he says, no, I didn't. They would kill him. So two witnesses can't have him bring a carbon. It's a very strong logic. Amrulai, the Rabbanan said back, it's a nice logic. However, it's not perfect. Why? He has a way out of bringing a carbon. He could say a carbon is only for a shagig. He could say the witnesses can say what he did, but he can get out of it by saying, but I did it on purpose. He's puttered from a carbon. So he has a certain strength. He has a strength over the witnesses because he can always claim what his intention was, that it's different than what would obligate him to bring a carbon. Okay, what are we saying? If he says, if he's believed against witnesses, then maybe he's believed also when there's one witness. We have to go further. The Gemara is going to explain. If that's the case, so Reisha, my time kamachayvi rabbanan. In the Reisha, which was when they said, when one witness tells him that he ate. No. Reisha, why did it say Reisha? Reisha. Yeah, but that was only one witness. My time if it's because they're believed, the meheman that he's believed, but trei ba'alma alfagav the kamakashlu inu mehemni v'kapachi rabbanan. If it would have been two witnesses, even if he is makhish the two witnesses, he is believed and not the witnesses. Elalav mishum de ishtik, ishtika kaida adamya. What they're bringing out is that it's really not the witness belief because he's believed against the witnesses. He's believed even against two witnesses. So one witness is not going to be mechayiv in the carbon. It must be just because of his being quiet, and that's what the svar is. Pristika kaida. Afagav the kamakish lahu. The afagav to inu. The afagav the kamakish lahu, that he is contradicting them. Inu mehemne. Inhu mehemne. That means they are believed, right? They are believed. And nevertheless, kapachi rabbanan. And the rabbanan say that he's pater. Why is he pater? Even though normally we would believe two witnesses, but we say that he's pater because he has a advantage over the witnesses. That makes sense? How does it say it over there?
First it says they are believed, and then it says, did you already read
The kapachi rabbanan.
Yet here with the Rabbanan except one excuse to be chilek from the Chattas when he disputes to witnesses. Evidently, witnesses have no credibility when it comes to obligating someone in the Chattas or food.
Right. So even though two witnesses are believed, but not against him. So one witness,
What's his strength?
because he could say, yeah, because he's makish, because he can claim what his he can claim what his kavanah was.
Of the maziness.
Right.
Yeah, that's why I say silence is tantamount to admission of guilt.
That's the silence. But if he's makish, it says, no, but makish because I didn't do it. Makish is I did it with the kavanah.
No, but because he could claim.
But that's not what he's doing.
I understand, but that would still give him
So the case is,
no in the
makish, I didn't do it.
no. So in the there's a seifa and there's a ratio. In the seifa, he's makish. He says that he didn't do it. Now the question is, do we believe him against two witnesses? Two witnesses could put him to death. So the Rabbanan say, yeah, but they can't make him bring a carbon because he could always claim what his kavanah was. And so therefore he has an advantage. They don't have a strength over him when it comes to bringing a carbon. He didn't claim that. Yeah, Tosfos discusses that. It's what are we saying, that he has a migu? That's what it sounds like. Okay, whatever the case is, we're bringing out that we really don't have a proof that an Eid Echad is Neman. All we're having is that a Shtika Kaida. That's all we're proving. Ela Svarahi, the Gemara says, rather, it must be that it's logical. Let's say we have something here that we're not sure if it's kosher, a piece of meat. Is it forbidden fat or kosher fat? And one witness comes and says, I know what it is. It's shuman, it's kosher fat, it's kosher meat. We trust him. Rashi says, what's the svara? Because how could a person eat in someone else's house? And you can't even trust his family if we're not going to say the svara. You have to trust people. Otherwise, there's going to be no kosher food. On the side, the Tosfos Yeshenim, you see this little piece? There's a question on Rashi's Pshat. It says, V'teima, malana bazeh adav yizab mashiachal. Rashi's raya is that it's going to be very difficult on us. Tosfos says, so who cares if it's difficult? So, everyone has to prepare their own food. He says that we actually have a different source. We learn it from Nida. Nida is believed because the pasuk says v'safrala, that she counts. Obviously, we're going to trust her. right? If that's the case, then Eidach Neman Bisur. Why didn't our Gemara say that? Our Gemara says Svara. I don't know. Okay. The Gemara says, Mi Dami. You can't compare it to the case that you just brought because Hasam Leis Chazaki Surah, Hachas Chazaki Surah, and Vein Davar Shabever, Pachas Mishnayim. It's a little complication in this Gemara. Basically, over there we have a piece of meat that we don't know if it's forbidden. So we're saying that you're going to trust one witness. Well, that's not the situation here. The situation here is that we have a woman that was married. Over here, it's a Chazaki Surah. If it's a Chazaki Surah, then how do you know that you trust Eidachad? By a piece of meat, it was not Chazaki Surah. In other words, I don't have an assumed prohibition. I have a question. And the Eidachad can answer that question. But over here, I have an assumed prohibition. And you're looking for an Eidachad to remove the prohibition. That's another step that we don't know about. Then the Gemara goes on and it says, Vein davar shebe'erva pachas mishnayim. And also, it's a davar shebe'erva. It has to do with marriages. And you can't have a testimony about marriages less than 2 witnesses. So 2 points. It's a discussion if that's 2 points or 1 point. But you can spell it out that it's 2 points. In other words, the Gemara is asking 2 questions. First of all, it's not a Chazaki Surah. First of all, it is a Chazaki Surah by us. And also, it's a Davar Shebe'erva. That's a Machlekes Rishonim how to learn this Gemara. The Gemara says, it's what we're dealing with is a case that's worse than this. We have a case where there's a piece of meat that's chaylev. Comes along an Eidachad and says, it's shuman, it's kosher. You can't trust him. And that's what you're telling me here, that you can trust him by the Eishes Ish. She's married, and we have one witness come and say the husband passed away. The Gemara says, "Mi dami hasam afilu asa beimei alei mehemni hacha kivin the chayasa beitrei mehemni chad nami lehemni." Over there, if you know that it's treif and 2 witnesses come, so it doesn't matter. Even if 100 witnesses come, they won't be believed. But over here, you would believe 2 witnesses, so we'll also believe 1 witness. It says, "Midi dehabi tevel hektish v'kainamis." Okay, and we will prove this from 3 cases: tevel, hektish, and kainamis. What's tevel? That's produce that wasn't tithed. Hektish is when it was consecrated, and kainamis is when someone takes a neder. He says kainam ze'alai. He forbids something on him. Kainam is a nickname for a neder. Okay, so it goes high tevel hechidami. What are we talking about? Idi day. If it's his own produce, so we believe him that it's believed. So mishum debiyad l'sakne. Over there, he has a special heter. Why we believe him? Because it's all in his capability to take the trumas and meisers. He could fix it. So if it's in his hands to resolve it, so he has a special ne'amanos. Eladacher, it must be that he's testifying about someone else, that it's someone else's produce, and he can't take truma for someone else. Maybe this is the opinion that follows, that a person can take truma on someone else's produce, and he doesn't have to inform the owner. And so when he comes and tells you that so-and-so's produce, the truma was taken, it's because he took truma from his own produce for that person. And then we're back to the same case, mishum debiyad l'sakne, that it's because he has the ability to resolve the problem. And that's why he's believed. And if you hold tzarech das bailam, that in order for him to take truma for the other person's produce, he would have to inform the owner. And so he comes along and says that I know for a fact that person's produce, the truma was taken. But where do I know that that's the case? How do I know that you're allowed to do that? So we go to the next example. He said hektish nami. When you spoke about hektish, when the person says that, don't worry, it's not hektish. says ikadushas damim. If it was hektish because the value was consecrated, mishum biyad liftaisi, he says, don't worry about it. That item is not hektish. How is he allowed to do that? Because he could have redeemed it without telling anyone. It says ikadushas aguf. And if the item is not redeemable, belongs to the mizbeach, he can't just redeem a carbon. It says idi day, if it's his own, going to be in for a little surprise here, because he can go to a rav and be mater neder. Yeah, isn't this a chiddush? Person can make a carbon, designate something as a carbon, and then he can go to the rav and say, I have charata, I want to take it off. Yeah, we had this in Psachim about challah. We had over there something about someone made it challah, and we said, well, what's the problem? You can go to the rav and take it off. Be mateneder.
So his nether is. We're about to call.
No, what we're saying is that the carbon becomes not holy anymore. If it's his own item, yeah, the carbon can become. And the problem with this, I don't understand. Like, there's so many gemaras where we had things that were, what do you do with this carbon and all of these things? Why don't you just go to the rav and take it off? Maybe it needs to be in front of you to be able to do that. I'm not sure. Ella da'acher. It must be that it was someone else's hektish, and you can't take it off. Well, v'amar yadana beit the itchel marialei. And he says, I know that the owner was Shaul, he asked the Rav for Hataras Nedarim, and he took off the Kedusha. The Gemara says, how do we know that we believe one witness to testify about someone else? So we have to go to the next case. We go to Kainamis. Kainamis was the case where someone makes a neder that he's not going to have benefit from another person. So he took a neder that he's not going to have benefit from such and such a item or whatever. So, what is the status of that, of a neder, which is called a kainam? If we say that a kainam means that it becomes consecrated, it's as if it's consecrated. Well, if that's the case, then maybe this person came along and he redeemed it. And if he redeemed it, then the item becomes deconsecrated, and the holiness goes on to the money. So it's biyadi l'sakin, biyadi l'ftaisei. That's why he's believed to say that don't worry about that. That's not a problem. Because of ein mila b'kainamis. But if we hold that it's not a type of consecration, it's just b'isr ba'almuhu derachav le'akaspe, and there's just a prohibition that's riding on its shoulders, but it's not like the item became holy. That there's, in other words, there's no possibility for redemption. We say that's the case, then 1 second. If it's his own, back to the same story. Could go to the Rav, and he could be mataneder. It must have been that it was someone else's. If someone else made that, and the person is claiming that I know that the owner asked for Hataras Nedarim, and that's why it's permissible. The problem is Higufa Minalan, but where do we know that from? Basically, we've just brought 3 more examples that don't resolve the question of where do we know that you can actually trust one witness when it's a chazik, right? When it's a chazik yisura. Amar Rab Zera, so Rab Zera gives us the teretz. It says like this: because we're so strict on what happens to this woman if she made a mistake, so therefore we're lenient on her in the beginning to allow her to get married. So the Gemara says, why are we strict at the end? Just don't allow her to get married until you have a better substantial proof. It says, no. Because of Igun, they wanted her to be able to get married, but they also wanted to be careful. So that what they did was they said that if you're making a mistake, it's going to be really awful. And so therefore she'll be careful at the beginning and not make that mistake. So what we're doing is we're putting an extra pressure on her to make sure that she really finds out that this is accurate. But ultimately we're going to trust one witness. Taisvus Yeshenim asks the question: if Minatayra and Eid Echad doesn't work, so how are the rabbis coming along and saying that an Eid Echad works? Mishamigan. Yeah, but you just told me that you can't trust Eid Echad. Now you're telling me that the rabbis, because of some logic, that if they're going to be strict on her at the end, so we're going to trust. But the Torah doesn't believe of one witness.
Which Tosos are you looking at now?
I'm looking at the Tosfos Yeshenim on the side. The second one, Mishum Igune Kilabe Rabbanan, Vim Taimar. You see, it's a little.
Yeah. This is interesting because this is cited as one of the premier discussions about the ability or lack of ability of the Rabbanan to uproot a mitzvah deraisa.
Yeah.
It
Now
comes
that
back to this.
is a mitzvah saseh.
Yes.
The Rabbanan can tell us, don't perform that mitzvah. Like, for example, Gezerah de Rabbah, they tell you don't blow the shofar on Shabbos, don't take the lulav on Shabbos, don't read the Megillah on Shabbos. They can tell you, B'shev al tasa, tell you don't go ahead and do the mitzvah. You're not doing a violation. But over here, it's worse than that. Here they're telling you that you can believe someone that's really not believed, and she can get married. This is much worse than a shev al tasa like we find in other Gemaras. So there's different possibilities. One possibility is that called the Mekadesh Adaita de Rabbanan Mekadesh. Whenever a person gets married, they're being married with the intention that the rabbis will agree. Now, so how does this work? Well, if one witness comes afterwards and says that if the husband died, so then the rabbis are able to disagree to the whole marriage, and they take off the marriage originally. So in other words, because the whole marriage was all based on what the Rabbanan would agree to, so if one witness comes, the Rabbanan can say, okay, we what's it called? What's the term that you
Retroactively nullify
it's
it.
retroactive. It's it's totally annulled. Marriage is annulled. The problem with that is that it doesn't fit with the Mishnah. Because the Mishnah says that the child is a mamzer, and what do you mean? She was never married. According to this, it's a problematic teretz. It doesn't answer. So, what you'd have to answer for this is that if it's actually true what the one witness says, then kol de mekadesh adait de rabbanan mekadesh. It's only if the person actually died that will say that they take it off originally. But if the person didn't die, the one witness is lying, then the marriage is still there, and we never said called the mekadesh adait de rabbanan mekadesh. And that's why the child would be a mamzer. It's a complication now. Okay. We'll go further. No, it's late. Okay, we'll leave it over here.
Isn't this one of the Tanayim, a Tanai that's accepted today? Despite the general rule, Ein Tanai ben Nasuyan,